So the biggest thing I would say that we have is when I'm sitting down, I'm talking to somebody and they say, I ask, well, who's your family? Who's your next of kin? Like, who would we be talking to and contacting? And they say, oh, well, I have 3 kids, but I only talk to one of them. The other 2 are estranged, or, whatever it may be. It's a difficult, maybe relationship.
Yes.
We all know, we all have them,
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, and I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and the first thing I think of is, I'm like, well, just so you know, in Michigan, and I have to say in Michigan because each state is different. Each state has their own law and regulations on how to do things with cremation, but in Michigan, you have to have a majority of next of kin sign off on cremation.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives. Well, today we're going to be talking about something that normally people don't want to talk about, and that is death. That part of our life is coming for most of us. All of us are going to experience. But for some of us who are a little bit more aged, like myself, there is some things that you need to get prepared for and that you don't want your loved ones to have to decide on. They might want to know your wishes. And maybe you don't even know what that process talks about. And maybe you're like me. It's like people want to talk about it, and all of a sudden, okay, let's not talk about this. We talk about positive things. But it does need to be discussed. So I have a great guest today that's going to be talking about how we can move this process of this part of our life forward and to put those plans in place so that our loved ones don't have to make those kind of decisions, spend a lot of money because they're kind of emotionally upset during that time by losing you. So I want to welcome to the show Johnna Adair, and she is from the Neptune Society, and she is going to be talking about some of those services and some of the services that we kind of like when people bring it up, you're like, oh, but we do need to talk about it because it is coming for all of us, and we want to be prepared and give our loved ones that peace of mind where they're going to be doing our wishes as opposed to, do you think they would have liked this? So we're going to take that out of their hands. So I want to welcome to the show, Johnna. Johnna. Okay, that is a little tricky name but it's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? So, I was trying to make sure I had it right. But I wanted to have you on the show because I am in a different season of my life. I never really thought about some of the things I've had to make decisions for with my parents. And my mother passed away in '98, so I had more of family around me to help make that decision. And then when my father died in 2019, there's some decisions we were making that I felt like, I don't know. I mean, and you're emotional, your family's emotional, and you want that service, which only is like one day. You have bringing people together, but you could spend a lot of money on it. And I don't think people would even be aware how much money you spend on it. And they're just like, but you love your loved one and you want to show them respect and honor, but there's other ways you can do it.
Yep.
And maybe it starts with having that conversation when you start seeing that as a possibility. So, all right, so welcome to the show, and tell us all about Neptune Society, why you started, and what's out there for us to even start the conversation.
Yeah, of course. So myself, I am a licensed funeral director, and the Neptune Society is a leading nationwide provider for cremation services that are affordable to anybody and everybody that's looking specifically for cremation. We have over 100 locations throughout the United States. We have been in business for over 50 years. It's a big thing. A lot of people always want to make sure that, who they're going through or with or,
right.
Handling a really important time in their life is, someone that they can trust. So we really specialize in pre-arranging and pre-planning and getting things down for families and exactly what they want, what they find important. For themselves.
Well, we don't even think about that when we're young, but we really, and I think it started becoming more aware of that probably when I got, around 50, started to think about making decisions like that, or at least sharing with loved ones what you would want. So, we put a lot of those in place in the last 2 years, making sure that, we are doing what our loved one wishes to do. And a lot of families I've experienced where families just pretty much are at each other's throats because someone's like, they want to somehow send off, mom or dad or aunt, you know what I mean? With respect and want everybody, now we're going to have this big party, and it really kind of breaks families because they're like, maybe this is not something that the person wanted, and maybe we're making decisions under emotional distress. Does that make sense?
100%. And that's what you'll see a lot of times too is, we have families that come in and they're like, I know mom was, ending life. She's had dementia for 10 years, and we knew this was going to happen, but we never had that conversation of what did you want, and do we do what her mom and dad did? Or, are we listening to, well, the one time she said she wanted this, but when you got 3 siblings, now they're like, well, she told me. And now you have people kind of,
Right.
going back and forth. So that's why we really, suggest like having those open talks and communication with your family. Just because you say, hey, this is what I want, doesn't mean you're saying, hey, I'm dying. And this is why we're talking about it.
I know. That's what they always say to me. If I bring the conversation up, the first
Are
thing
you sick, Mom?
Is there something
What's wrong? Yeah.
What happened? What are you telling me? Or, I'm saying, what's happening? And I'm like, nothing. I'm just, you start to think that you wouldn't want them to have to make these major decisions on their own.
Yeah.
And besides your children, you have spouses that are involved. Mm-hmm. And, maybe an aunt, uncle. That was the situation with me. I'd get aunts calling me up and, this is not what your father would want, or whatever. Why are you making, I'm just like, what are you talking about? And you were the one at his deathbed and you were listening to his conversation. And okay, so let's talk about, even when it comes down, because some people might have cemetery plots, which I would say sometimes I had mine at a young age, and then all of a sudden things happen and I no longer have those anymore. But, you started getting those maybe from your parents. Hey, we got 4, we'll give you 2.
Yep.
And you may not even want to be buried where they're, if that makes any sense, okay? So let's talk about when they come down and they sit down with you and they may be getting to the point where, before we go into downsize our home, like a lot of people start to do, and we did the same thing, and then start to look at their trust and start to look at, okay, let's start making these other decisions. Well, how does that process work when they come to you?
Yeah, so really we sit down and we're very transparent with every single family, and we're gonna meet the needs of each one. Every person is different. Some people are like, I want the most simplest thing you can think of. I don't care what you do with me, you know what I mean? And then you get others that are like, okay, I know exactly what I want, where I'm gonna be, what I'm gonna wear, what I wanna do, and they're just to the T. So we really just sitting down with you and asking, where do you want to start? What questions do you have? Because usually it is questions, the long questions, and no question is stupid, No. And then really just explaining to them the process, If you pass away, you just call us. We come right there. It doesn't matter daytime, holiday, weekend, nights. We're on call 24/7 to help that family. So we're going to wherever they passed away at. We're picking them up. We're getting the necessary paperwork and documents completed and signed. We're notifying Social Security for the family.
And that's a big deal. Those are big things that people start to realize they have to take care of once a loved one, mostly a parent or even a spouse, right, dies, and you're like, okay, now I've got to take care of all of this. I mean, I know people that just literally break down. I don't know even where to do.
Yeah, where to start, you know? And so doing a pre-arrangement is taking out so much of that guessing of the family. I sat down with my grandpa and my grandma one day. They were just talking to me about my job because, of course, it's fascinating to a lot of people. Like, oh God, why? What do you do? Da da da. And so my grandparents were just like, I was talking to them and I said, "What do you guys want?" And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do cremation." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Who'd you pick or who you're going through?" And he's like, nobody, like just cremate us. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not that easy, we want to pick somewhere. And he's like, well, I got money in the bank for that. And I go, that's not the point though. I said, I'm going to give you a vivid, example, and you think about it. I'm like, you guys have a home in Florida and here in Michigan. Say you're in Florida with grandma and you have a heart attack in the middle of the night. You pass away for, who knows. And the police come out to the home, and the first thing they're going to say to grandma is, what funeral home are we calling? well, you just, oh, it doesn't matter, we have money in the bank, you know, like,
Right.
no, it does matter, because now she's left with that hard decision of calling around funeral homes, asking pricing, or just picking the local one, and then it might not be what she wanted, and doing a bunch of stuff that you didn't even want, you know, and you know, he kind of sat back like, okay. I got a call about a month later, and he was like, all right, let's talk, you know? And I said, listen, I don't care who you use, what you do. I just want you to think about what you want and make sure you let all of us know and select somebody. Because it is important to be able to know I just have to make one phone call, you know? And that's the one nice thing about Neptune is we're in so many different locations that it's like you can make that call if you are traveling, you know, or if you have a secondary home, you know, and we are just going to pick up and, you know, take care of everything from wherever you're at that point.
That is true. I didn't even think of that because, you know, traveling throughout the winter and stuff, what happens. And you don't think about that when I will tell you, when I was young, I didn't think about it a lot. I had other things with children, but
Yep.
now that I'm at the season of my life, what am I going to do on that? And my mom was buried, you know, your traditional way, you know, the coffin and everything, you know, and my dad was buried, cremated.
Yep.
And the biggest issue, you'll get to maybe understand this, is where they put the urn, and everybody was like, you know, well, it should have been someplace else. And it was just like, how do we carry the urn through the church, if that makes any sense? How the process, because before it used to be, you know, the pallbearer came through,
Yep.
and how is that showing respect? There was all these kind of things, and that's all I heard was people, you look, we're trying to do the best we can
Yeah.
in this situation, and everybody had, you know, that were old school, new school. We're trying to combine the different, and nobody was happy.
Yeah.
Everybody had an issue, and I'm just like, you know what? This is the best we could. We didn't know what is. Are you hearing that? It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
totally different 20 years later that things have changed.
Well, and I have people that call and go, I didn't even know Dad had this policy, you know, like he has everything paid for, like what a relief, you know? And then after that, they are like, can you tell me if he put anything in the notes about what he wanted to do afterwards? You know, like what did he want done with his ashes? Because
Yes.
he went and got this set up for us, so we never had to worry about the financial burden, but also making the decisions. But we didn't have the conversation afterwards. And the best part about cremation, though, is you have so many options. You can be buried next to your loved one still if
Yeah,
you
my
want to
dad
be
is.
buried. You know, you can be scattered. We have options to do a memorial wreath down in Florida, or we have sea scatterings. So, you know, if you're like, oh, well, you know, I lived and had the best times of my life out in California. Okay, well, we can go out there and do sea scattering if you want. You know, so there's many
So you go out there and do
options.
it?
Yeah,
Or
I
you
mean,
have
I
to
wish
have
they let me go out and do it, but
No, I'm serious. I'm
Yeah.
thinking I live right out of a golf course. You know, just because.
Well-
I don't know if legally you can do that.
Yeah, no, scattering has to be only on private property, like it's you owned property.
Oh, right.
If you went out on the golf course, you'd have to go get their approval and ask them. And if they give you that, sure, you know, but you'd have to talk with them. But you can only, scattering you can do out at sea as long as you're so many nautical miles out from shore.
Okay.
And so that's why we can do it out there without any issues.
How do you deal with you know, I go to a lot of veterans funerals, and you know, they have the whole casket coming in, and they have the veterans with them, and then we have, you know, the salute, and we have the, you know, 21, the whole thing. Okay, so how was that done if you're looking at somebody that, because we do have Korean veterans,
Yeah.
we have a lot of, very few left of World War II. Now we're going in Korea and of course Vietnam. You know, how were you part of that, working with the veteran services
Yeah.
to get that all together?
So veterans are near and dear to me. Both my mom and my dad are veterans. I was born on an Army base. So, you know, so it's very, you know, important to me to make sure that every veteran is honored, you know, regardless of what you choose, cremation or traditional burial. They are still eligible to receive a burial flag, as well as honors, like what you were talking about, where they
Right.
play taps, they fold, they present the flag, you know, that kind
21
of stuff.
salute. Yeah, all
Yep,
that
all
kind
of
of
it.
stuff, yeah.
So we set all of that up for families, as well as anything at national cemeteries. So if I have a family member, you know, or I have somebody that's a veteran and they want to be buried at Fort Custer, that's down in Battle Creek, we schedule everything for the family. So they're not even having to worry about how do I do that? How do I make the arrangements? You know,
I don't even know who to contact.
yeah, yep. So we walk them through all of it. We let them know too if they have a surviving spouse, even a decedent spouse that they still maybe have the ashes for, and they want them to be buried next to them. That's a service that we can also set up for them at no additional cost because they're a veteran, a spouse of a veteran. So we help with all veteran applications if we can. Like if there's something I don't know, I know exactly at the VA, like, hey, here's their contact information, go there, they'll help you with the benefit portion of things and things like that too. So we definitely make sure we can help them any way we can.
What are you seeing mostly now that we're, like I said, things have changed. People's finances have changed. The cost of getting buried, it was very expensive. I don't know if it's still very high today, but it was when my dad, we were trying to figure it all out, dividing the money up amongst people to help offset that cost. So what is the average cost of a burial today?
I don't know based on burials really, because we don't do really burials. It's
so
really
you don't compare what you could probably offer?
I mean, yeah, like if you look at just in general, like what would it be to be buried nowadays, like a traditional burial, you know what I mean? Like it really can range depending on what casket do you pick out, what cemetery are you going to, what headstone do you get? I mean, you can go from 10,000 to 20,000 just depending on your specific wants and needs and everything like that. And that's why they say cremation is the more affordable choice. But again, if you're still choosing to have your ashes buried, it goes down to, did mom and dad already have a plot? Are you paying for just the opening and closing? Are you, so there's so much that goes into it that it's really like, I tell each family, like, we're treating you as an individual. We're going to go cost by cost and figure out what is it that you want, what location are you going to, and things like that. So
what is the most surprising thing when people do come to you and they start making these plans? Is it down to the little details? I'm like, oh, they have to stop. I didn't think of that. But what is the most thing is besides going, dying in Florida, having to decide, or what funeral home, anything else that you would see that people are like, I never, because I heard your interviews on other, I'm like, I didn't even think of that. And it made me think when I've heard you speak before.
So the biggest thing I would say that we have is when I'm sitting down, I'm talking to somebody and they say, I ask, well, who's your family? Who's your next of kin? Like, who would we be talking to and contacting? And they say, oh, well, I have 3 kids, but I only talked to one of them. The other 2 are estranged, or, whatever it may be. It's a difficult, maybe relationship.
Yes.
We all know, we all have them,
Okay, yeah, and I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and the first thing I think of is, I'm like, well, just so you know, in Michigan, and I have to say in Michigan, because each state is different. Each state has their own law and regulations on how to do things with cremation, but in Michigan, you have to have a majority of next of kin sign off on cremation. So if you have your children or your next of kin, you have to have 2 out of the 3 sign off.
Really?
Yes. And so that's the first thing people say to me. And so then they're like, so I can't be cremated if Jimmy and Joe don't sign it. I'm like, well, no, we can do other things to get that set up. And it's called a funeral representative.
Okay.
And so a funeral representative is where you appoint somebody to be that person to make your final decisions. And that in Michigan, like it comes above that line of hierarchy. So if you appointed me, even though you got a husband, I can actually be your person to do everything for you.
Thank goodness. I mean, I didn't know really. There's certain things, because I know people get very emotional, and then there's infighting. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got their own opinions, and then you got their spouses, and I've never seen it go well. I've always seen more, people just, and over the
smallest things. Well, they're grieving, and they're going through such, sometimes it's their first death and they've never had to deal with it before. So they're in that, I don't know what to do. Where do I go? Who do I call? And it's just this, and then on top of it, add, the grief to it and the loss to it. And I mean, it's just hard for some people to really comprehend what to do moving forward. And then you add in, well, I don't get along with my brother and now I got to talk to him. Like,
I get that all the time. It's like, I hear that all the time. People are like, and then I had to sit in the hospital room with people that I don't even get along. It's so emotional. And then all of a sudden, I guess it is a way to deal with grief. When you're starting to make these decisions, it's easier to be fighting with you.
Oh yeah.
Than to weeping that your parent just died, or your loved one just died that you're so close. You could be even an aunt, or a sibling, and all of a sudden, I'm taking it out, and another thing, you're just bringing out everything. You've probably seen a lot.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat on the phone and at the end of it, I'm like, man, you know what I mean? Like, I could tell that they just needed to get it off their chest. They didn't have anybody else to talk to, and it's just a sounding board, for them. And it's just like, it's okay. We're gonna get through this. You know what I mean? Like,
I wish it was
one thing at a time.
I wish it was a way to get people back together, but sometimes it's very short-lived, and it is what it is. Okay, so let's talk about, like I mentioned, the cremation is a good. Then I was going to ask you, are people opting for like having the whole visual ceremony with the casket, but yet they're being cremated, and gives that family that? Is that an option, or is it basically one or the other?
Oh no, you can do, what's so nice about cremation is you have so many options. So if you want to have that more traditional feel still at your church, and you can still have, whether it's the ashes present or just a photo present, you can still do a whole service, and what's nice is, let's say it's Michigan and it's the middle of January and our weather's terrible, and someone passes away, you don't have to have a service right then and there. You can say, hey, we're gonna do it come March or April, when we can have everybody who's living in, out of state come and join, to make it, more easily, when people are traveling and stuff to get there.
Right.
But then we've had people to where it's like, oh, Dad would have never wanted that. We're doing a party. He said he wants a party. We're doing it in the backyard. We're having everybody come, and it's maybe not so traditional, but it's still a celebration.
Right.
That people are still there talking, telling stories, giving eulogies, having a celebration of that person, so you can do it anywhere. We've seen it all over the place, and honors can be anywhere. And I tell that to families. I'm like, they are a veteran. They serve for our country. If you're in a backyard, we're sending them to the backyard. You know what I mean?
Right.
To do that for you. So it can be anywhere.
Okay, so now that the world has changed and we don't get the paper like we used to, the obits, this is the problem that we're having in our lives. We're hearing about people's deaths 2 months, 3 months later. And do you have anything in place, like when we set up something? Look, these are the current emails of friends, colleagues, board members that used to serve on boards, just people that you would like a shout out, hey, that we've passed away, right? These are what we have currently. And how to have that together, as opposed to, I don't know how many times we went to some place and they're like, he passed away 2 months ago. I'm like, what? We would have went.
Yeah.
We didn't know. We were like, they served on a board together. They were, they were friends years ago, or could have been a classmate that nobody told you about. Not everybody's on social media, on every group. How have the funeral, or funeral services have moved forward, and people are like, look, this is my current emails of people, and I want to keep them updated, because you know what, I feel like I'm 85 years old, I'm not going to be here, or 80, and I really would like, a board member that I'd just like to let them know that I've passed away. Do you have something like that? Is that something coming, or because we missed so many funerals because we never heard it. We never knew.
So we offer an online obituary on our website. We go to online because not everybody gets the paper, or not everybody passes away where they maybe served on that board, or where they went to high school, or where they went to college, that kind of stuff. And obituaries can be pricey depending on where you are looking to put it in too. So it gives the families an option. And on our website, you can click share, and it automatically, you can share to Facebook and social media and email and send that out. So they have the direct link. They have everything in there of in lieu of flowers, or where a service is going to be. And in order for people to see that, who do I email it to? Who do I send it to? How do I get that? When people pre-arrange, we send them a planning guide.
Okay.
And as I talk to families, I'm like, listen, in this planning guide, you can write your own obituary if you want to. You can put what you're maybe most proud of. Most people are like, I don't want to write my own obituary, but it's like, I do. I don't want you to put something in there that I'm like, I don't want people to know about that. Like, I didn't find that important. I would like this to be mentioned. But
my
also,
third PhD, I want that.
I might have not used it, but no.
Yeah, really.
And so I'm like, but in that book, I'm like, write down things like emails to friends and family that you would want maybe like sent your
so you
information.
Can put that information in
Yeah,
there.
so you have a booklet that'll walk you through so many different things, and it's really more of like a, you know, are you a veteran? Then write down stuff. You know, Social Security questions that you might have are in there. You know, it really is just what it says, a planning guide. So people can put that in.
And I would think that I'd love to look at that. We need to talk in the future, but I would like to put some of those things in place for me, because I know that I feel bad that we missed so many people's funeral in the last couple of years that we had no idea. Well, and they're like, well, it was on Facebook. I'm like, well, it's not that I watch it on social media. I just wish I would have got the call or the email and in the subject, blank has passed away, and you're like, oh, and they click.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I want to wrap this, so we're able to clean this. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that I did not cover today?
When you pre-arrange, we do lock your cost in. So what's nice is obviously you don't know when you're going to pass away, and if it's 20 years from now, you're paying what you paid 20 years ago, which is a big part, you know.
Yeah.
Affordability for a lot of people is what's important. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, sit down, get that price locked in, and make your family aware and take that burden off of them of what your choices and decisions are. And, you know, we offer things such as like payment opportunities and plans. So it's not like you have to pay for everything up front.
Okay.
You know, not everybody has that ability to do that. They're on Social Security, you know. So we have the option to making sure that we're making it as affordable for you, but we're sitting down with each person and giving them, what do you want? You know,
that's a great
step by
idea.
step.
And I didn't like making that decision. I didn't like going up against my, you know, family meetings. That whole week when my dad passed away, even my mom going to pick out a coffin, it wasn't a fun situation. And I wish that I would have had a lot of that in place so I could do more grieving with my loved ones.
Yeah.
And not have the conflict that came about. But we all survived it and we got through it. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, nobody ever forgets a big fight over things like that. But it's not that you don't love the person. It's just like, you know, look, we have to be reasonable here.
Yeah.
This is what we have to work with.
Yep.
And we can't do everything that we'd love to do. And that's what I wanted to share with people. All right, Johnna, can you tell our audience how they can get a hold of you through Neptune Society? Where can they reach you for more information?
Yep. So the Neptune Society, we have a 1-800 number, so 1-800-NEPTUNE. So you can call us from wherever you're located. If you want, you'll be directed to your closest location. Our local address is at 68th and Kalamazoo, so you can always stop into our office if you would like, or online. We have so many resources on there, so you can always ask for information if you don't want to call us, or we do have a direct number, 616-656-0083. And you can always, you know, just ask for me specifically, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And you might want, it may be great to have you, when they call you, say, how can I have this conversation with my mom or my dad, my aunt, which I know is coming, and we need to have these decisions made, and how do I start that conversation?
Yep.
Yep. All right, Johnna, thank you for being here today. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
This is Pamela Kime from Grand Tap Media. We will catch you next time. Take care, everyone.